This is Love Scotland with Jackie Bird.
Hello and welcome to the Love Scotland podcast. And for my guest today, that phrase, Love Scotland, could not be more apt. Sam Heughan is an actor best known to millions around the world for his role as Jamie Fraser in TV's Outlander. The phenomenally successful series is about a nurse from the 1940s who time travels back to Jacobite Scotland and falls in love with Jamie, a Highland warrior. Being part of Outlander has brought Sam fame and opportunities, but the filming of it, often in the rugged parts of Scotland it depicts, also recently reignited that love of his country and its wide open spaces. So much so that Sam has written a book about one particular journey in the wilds. It's called Waypoints and it's out now. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction.
Oh, thank you. Well, your book, genuinely, it came to me late. I devoured it in a couple of nights. I really enjoyed it, and it surprised me on two fronts. One, I've always hankered after doing the West Highland Way, and after reading this, I am now definitely going to do it.
You seem like you're determined to do that.
So job done. Also, though, I was really surprised by how honest it was about your life.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is that something you knew you were going to do at the outset, or did that honesty develop as you were writing it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think, well, it's two things, the book. It's a love letter to Scotland, it's the West Highland Way, it's about the walk that I did. And the other half of the book is a memoir. It felt like, forgive me, the right waypoint in my life right now to write it. It felt like I've been through this journey as an actor, as a jobbing actor, growing up in Scotland and trying to break Hollywood or break, the industry, and then finally getting some success on Outlander. So, yeah, it's something that I never thought, though, that I would be as honest. The loss of my father, actually during the beginning of season 1 of shooting Outlander, was a big moment in my life. I didn't know him. He left when I was 18 months old, but going to see him in his last moments and visit him and learn a bit more about it had definitely an effect on me. And I think just writing about that has been quite cathartic, I think.
In the foreword, I think that sums it up, because the foreword, it's described as a parable of the longer journey to becoming the leading actor that you are today. So it's got highs and lows, but what shines through is resilience. And we'll talk a little about that later.
Or stupidity.
No, well, okay, in a way, because I was struck by your impetuousness. Now, this is a walk. This is about 100 miles with a little mountain climb at the end.
A wee one, yeah.
Tell me about the madness that prompted it.
Well, I suppose my life is a little mad. I work on this TV show. They're long days. I'm not going to say we're digging coal or saving lives, but we're certainly on a job that is quite demanding of your time. It's kind of a stamina. It's quite draining on your energy. And I had this small gap this time last year, almost to the very day before Halloween, that I decided, I have this week off before I had other commitments. So I thought, you know what? It's something that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to do the West Highland Way. Now's the time. So with very little preparation, and in hindsight, that's definitely something that I should have thought about. I went to a local outdoor store, bought everything in the store, and set off the next day. And I think from that very first moment, I was, really questioning, why am I doing this? And as you find out in the book, by day 2, I almost gave up.
You had been filming just before you set off.
That's right.
You went out for a jog in Glen Etive, and I have to say that is one of the National Trust for Scotland's places.
Wow.
It's beautiful, it's moving. But at the same time, you could have decided to do anything. But it comes back to what was happening in your life at that time.
Yeah.
And what scenery does to you, what the great outdoors does to you.
Yeah.
You were raw. Is that why you decided on that particular day, I need some sort of spirituality, perhaps, if that's not overplaying it? I don't know.
No, I mean, absolutely. Firstly, I think Scotland does, for me, And I think for many people, the landscape gives you a sense of spirituality. There's a connection that we have to the land as Scottish people. Or if you come here, there's a tangibility. You can feel the people that have lived here in the past. And it's very much present. And especially in Glenative or Glencoe, which is where we were, the history that is there. I think we all have a sort of connection to Glencoe. When you go there, it's so dramatic. You got the Buckie, the Bucalet of Moor, the Great Herdsman Mountain there, and you've got the Devil's Staircase and all the stories about the massacre that was there. We had been shooting there, Outlander, a scene that actually became the opening of season 6, but actually we shot it at the very end of season 6. And we were there, and that morning I decided to go for a run along a segment of the West Highland Way, very short part of the run. And as I was doing it, I was thinking, why have I never done this? The beginning of the West Highland Way actually starts really close to my house, so it felt right. And actually, again, also Glencoe is featured in my life in Men in Kilts. It was the starting point for this mad road trip that I went on with my co-star Graham McTavish. So yeah, it definitely, it's somewhere that I've always wanted to do, and the walk that I've always wanted to do. And then I guess, as you said, about being raw, I think I needed time out. I needed to switch off.
There's a scene in Local Hero, which is a movie that I try to get into just about every podcast, where the locals are being berated for wanting to ruin their own environment, and they say you can't eat scenery. That may be the case, I understand that. But if you turn that around, scenery can feed you. Incomers, visitors like us.
Yeah.
I think it feeds our soul.
It does, yeah. And it's like nowhere else, I think. I've recently been in America, and I did a bit of a road trip up to Yellowstone, Wyoming and Montana, and the scenery there is obviously, incredible. It's vast, very, very different to ours. But there's something about Scotland, there's something about the wild places, and especially when you're on your own. I talk about in the book, after a couple of days of walking and you don't see anyone, you don't speak to anyone, you do kind of lose it a little bit, but also the scenery takes over. And I think I was at the first few days sort of fighting it, trying to assert myself on the landscape. And then as soon as I relaxed into the walk and allowed it to dictate, when I stopped and when I walked for hours, I really enjoyed it.
So you set off in this madcap scheme. You have got far too much equipment. Spoiler alert, the backpack does not end the movie with you, okay? So that's all I'll say there.
I'm sorry. No backpacks were hurt in the making of this, but
when you set out, did you know you were going to write about it?
I did, yes, I did. I knew I was going to be writing a book. I knew I wanted to do an adventure around that. I didn't quite realize it would be as much as a memoir. It was more about just an adventure. And by the end of day 2, spoiler alert, I was going to give up. I was so close to giving up. And I thought, well, no one really knows that I'm doing this walk, so I could just go home, go back to bed, and no one will know that I failed, and it will be fine. But then I thought, well, then there's no story, is there? So there's no book. So I guess initially that was what motivated me to leave my front door on that sort of blustery autumnal day. But I was seeking something else. I was seeking some sort of solitude and solace and a place to reflect. And I mean, where better to reflect upon your life and your journey than the great highlands of Scotland.
And what about the device that's used in the book of weaving your walk and your life story?
Yeah.
Was it always going to be like that, or did that evolve?
It really evolved, and it was strange how much it kind of did work as a device, because I was a jobbing actor. I am a jobbing actor, or I was, and had many success but many failures. And I think the ups and downs really, as soon as I looked back on the memoir side of it and then looked back at the journey in hindsight, I was like, well, this really fits really well. And even reaching the top of Ben Nevis or seeing the mountain and the elation that I got also kind of married really well with the sort of securing of this life-changing TV role that I've had in the last decade.
It's strange. We change, obviously, as we get older and we gain experiences. But what happens to us in our childhood determines so much of the adult that we become. And reading about it and how in your childhood you were entranced by legend, by Arthurian stories, by Robert the Bruce, you talk about swinging your imaginary sword and shield.
Right.
I think it's almost saying that, right, this guy is going to be in Outlander. It's
Right,
going to
yeah,
it's
yeah.
going to play a
Funny,
part
isn't
in
it?
his
Yeah.
in his adult life. It's almost like you were made for it.
It is a very strange one. I mean, I don't know if I believe in, in your fate or destiny or anything like that. However, it does feel right. I was born and brought up in the southwest of Scotland on the grounds of an ancient castle. I used to play in there and imagine myself in this castle, and I certainly was obsessed with, the Arthurian legends and the Bruce, and, here I am playing essentially, a Scottish Highland warrior, the king of men. But even on the walk, I came across a lochan that, legend has it that, Bruce's sword was thrown in there, which is, very similar to the, Lady of the Lake and the Arthurian legend of Excalibur. But even that, it resonated with me on the walk.
From my point of view, I'm always banging on about trying to take kids out into the great outdoors or taking them to historic castles.
Yeah.
They may be old ruins through
Yeah.
adult eyes,
Yeah.
but from a child's eye, you're forgetting that ingredient, that imagination.
Yes, that's lovely you say that. I absolutely agree. I think as a child, it's still alive. And, as soon as you're told these stories, you kind of imagine these people there. And I mean, we've got so many great ones, and not just, ancient castles. I mean, one of my favourites, the Antonine Wall here, the Romans that we hear, I think is such a fascinating part of history in Scotland. And I think for children, it's important that we get them out there. And we're so lucky in Scotland. We have so many great sites that you can take children or adults that like to pretend they're children to explore.
In the book, I keep coming back to this honesty, and especially in terms of having a career. People would look at you now and assume it's that overnight success thing. But my goodness, you worked your butt off.
Right.
You had a lot of near misses.
Yes.
You had a lot of knockbacks. And it's that resilience once again. At the outset, were you always going to be that candid about your failures?
Probably not. And when I look back at the writing, I'm like, well, maybe I've lent too much into the failures and not celebrated the successes. But no, I mean, it's a huge part of being an actor, and I think, or a creative in the industry. And I think, my mother is an artist, and she always instilled in me, that it's not going to be easy, that it's going to be a difficult journey. And I think, I don't know whether if it was, as I said before, stupidity or resilience or stubbornness, but I had a belief in that I wanted to do this. I always knew I wanted to act or be in that world. And I mean, I think also if there's something to take away from the book, it's, just encouraging people about perseverance and that hard work does pay off.
And you mentioned in the book that when you were an up-and-coming actor, you would devour books by other actors to learn what an actor's life was like. Yeah. Well, your book has now joined that canon because I think it's a great waypoint, if you like, for young actors who see you immensely successful and can see clearly that you had very, very low points.
And what not to do, yes. But no, I did. I was very lucky. I went to the Conservatoire in Scotland, the Royal Scottish Academy at the time, and I remember going through the library each week there, and they had a great number of books from greats there, and it was really important to me that sort of period, still relatively young and impressionable. But I actually been working with the Conservatoire recently. I've created a couple of scholarships there to encourage young producers or actors to also think about other things, not just, waiting for the phone call or waiting for to land the job. For instance, writing a book or creating your own content or writing scripts, or just to realize that there's more to creativity and to the industry than maybe you would first imagine.
There was one scene that really shone through and stayed with me. It was one of your many jobs, and you were serving cocktails at a fancy do, and you ended up serving a cocktail to a contemporary of yours who had made it big as an actor. And at that point, I think you'd had quite a lot of knockbacks. And I felt at that point that those Heughan castle walls began to buckle just a little. Yeah. Was that a particularly low point?
It was. I had been to America a number of times. I'd been working on and off, had some relative success, and then, kind of was back to square one and was, in my early 30s. And I was working in London I think it was the V&A there, and a lot of actors were employed to sort of pour cocktails and be good hosts for the guests there. And yes, Richard Madden of Game of Thrones fame was there as a guest, and I knew him from many years ago from the Academy. And he came up and he put his drink on my tray, or I had to hold his drink, and he didn't notice it was me. He was very busy, and I sort of had to stand there and hold his drink. And as he came back, he took it and sort of walked off. And it wasn't that I felt ashamed or was jealous of him or anything like that. It was more just that I realized that I was not on the path that I wanted to take. And in fact, the walls of Heughan's Castle, if anything, were probably strengthened by that, because it was like, oh, okay, I really now need to dig deeper.
I like it. Oh, I like that. That's a great approach.
Oh, thank you.
I'm also very heartened by your honesty about how you have to look in the industry, because you don't hear men talking about it. Lots of women about the pressures. Why was that important to include it?
Oh, yeah, very, very important. It's a huge part of being an actor or actress, but especially an actor. And I guess things are changing slowly. Certainly for women, I think, there's a lot more awareness about body issues, but also about the pressures put on women. But I think men, we've never really spoken about it.
It affected your health.
It did. I was, young. I had very little information. I knew I had to look a certain way. And so the way I thought to look in the best shape I could was to, not eat and to run as much as I could. And I really did sort of get a hang up around food and around my body shape for a long time. And thankfully, that led me on a journey of health and wellness, and led me to sort of educate myself. And is essentially probably why I created My Peak Challenge, which is my charity fundraiser platform, because I want to share that information with people, because you realize that people still don't really understand where to look or where to get good information about, a healthy lifestyle. But the body issue thing is something, because there are pressures for male actors. We're expected to take your top off at any point, have a six-pack and sort of be fine with it. And actually, I think it's as exposing for a male actor to do that as it is for a woman.